Hi, Alex. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much. How are you doing, Mary?
I'm doing really well. And, I know that you're in a unique situation where you are right now and also in the middle of a big transition. So, can you share for listeners where you are right now and what's going on in your life?
Yeah, absolutely. So I am actually at the end of my Jakarta quarantine. So I'm quarantining on my way back into Bali, and I am on the way to be moving permanently to Bali. So I lived in the Middle East for about 7 years. And during that time, I built up an online business. And then in October of 2021, I'm like, I don't even know what year it is, 2021, I went down to Bali and visited for a couple months and decided that I wanted to move there permanently. So now I'm just kind of getting everything organized to move there. So it's really exciting.
That's so exciting. And I'm so excited to have you here too. Yeah.
Yeah.
So soon after I started Sun and Moon Sober Living, just to give people a bit of background, I started seeing your name pop up all the time, like all the relevant content and just seeing what you were doing, and was really blown away by the community that you've built around sobriety and yoga. And then I saw you were coming to Bali, which is where I live. And I was like, this is so perfect. So I got
It's
to go to
amazing.
your yoga class. Yeah. And be part of this beautiful sharing circle. And, we had a really nice conversation over lunch. And you are like the same bright, authentic, and powerful, like, force in person as you come across online. So I just want to really like acknowledge you for that.
Oh, thank you. And it was really amazing when you came into my life and we got to spend that afternoon like hanging out together, because I was feeling a bit at that point like I hadn't really found my people yet in Bali. And it was really nice to just meet like such a like-minded person who's like in the yoga world, in the sober world, doing work around mental health. So that was really cool.
Yeah, it was amazing for me too. And I'm excited to have you back here on the island.
Yeah.
I want to go all about into your work and what you've got going on in Bali, because you've just like manifested such an incredible dream for yourself. But before we do, could you tell us about what life was like for you before you got sober?
Yeah, absolutely. So I am originally from Toronto, Canada, and I spent my time in Canada from when I was born until I was 23. And I grew up in the very normal city culture of North America where my friends drank, my family drank. Actually, all the adults in my life drank. I don't think I ever saw a sober person growing up, like as a role model. And none of them drank to excess, but it was, alcohol was present at every special occasion. It was in the house. My parents drank on the weeknights and on the weekends. It was just a normal part of my upbringing. And when I became a teenager, I started drinking because that's what I saw adults do. And my partying was pretty excessive from a young age. My drinking was pretty excessive from a young age. But to me, it didn't seem like there was anything wrong with me because it just seemed that that's what everyone did. And when I went to university, towards the end of my university time, I remember I lived across from the beer store and was drinking, one or two beers almost every night with dinner. And then when I was 23, I got a job working in Kuwait. And I remember when I got hired for this job, well, first of all, everyone had a million stereotypes about the Middle East. And everyone kept saying, like, don't you know that alcohol is illegal there? And I knew that. I knew that alcohol was illegal in Kuwait, but I had talked to people at the school that hired me and they said, oh no, it's fine. Like you can learn how to make it, you can get it. And so I moved to Kuwait. And when I was living in Kuwait, it's really clear when I look back on it, like there's nothing like living in a dry country to show you how serious your problem is, because I would think about drinking all the time, think about leaving on vacation to drink, think about who I could hang out with and if I could drink with them, learning how to make alcohol, and constantly being like, my life sucks here in Kuwait because I can't drink. Everything revolved around it. And I moved to Abu Dhabi, and there were plenty of reasons why I moved to Abu Dhabi, but a main one was that I could drink there. And when I got there, it was like, not only could I drink, but it's so interesting how the place where you are can like massively shape who you are. And in Abu Dhabi, like not everyone drinks to excess, but the culture and the community that I found myself in, which was expat teachers living abroad, was normal to go out and binge drink on a weeknight at these ladies' nights, or start drinking at noon on a Friday. And it was really common to have these bottomless brunches. And so for someone that I already had a drinking problem before I got to Abu Dhabi, I had been through these extreme culture shock situations, lost my community, not with my family. And all of a sudden I'm in Abu Dhabi where, go out to a bar on a Monday or Tuesday night and like your boss is there drinking with you, And so it hit a point where there were a couple occasions that I've spoken about before on other podcasts where, I was in a circumstance where I was traveling, I was backpacking through Southeast Asia, and I was riding up a boat on the Mekong River, and I was staying at this Laotian village at a homestay for New Year's Eve. And I was like pissed off because there was no alcohol in this homestay, which is like the most ridiculous thing in retrospect, because this is like a once in a lifetime thing. Like I'll probably never stay in a Laotian village overnight ever again in my life. Right. And I was like, I can't believe this is how I'm spending my New Year's. Like I was looking up flights to go to Bangkok. Like it was just wild. And then the same thing happened a few months later when I was with my mom and we were going up the high Atlas Mountains to this homestay for my birthday. And I'm like, my birthday's ruined because I can't drink. And this was the moment. Like I had someone on my podcast a while back who described it as the surrender period. And it's this period when you're like, okay, this is the end of my drinking, but you're like not quite ready to let it go. And this is how I would describe that last point. Like I remember being in this homestay in Morocco being like, I need to quit drinking. And it was about a week later. So that was my 27th birthday, April 7th. And then I quit on April 13th. So I finished out the trip. And then on the flight from Morocco to Abu Dhabi was like, okay, this is it. Wow. And at the point when I was quitting, it was never that I was going to be sober forever. It was supposed to be like a 28-day sobriety challenge. That was it. And my withdrawal was so hard. It was probably one of the hardest periods in my life, like other than when I had like a really serious depressive episode a couple years earlier. This was probably one of the hardest things I've ever been through. And I think it was not only the withdrawal, like I think everyone who's drinking to excess the way I was experiences some kind of withdrawal, but I think also having a mood disorder and then the way the removal of alcohol impacted my moods. It was more the mental health that I was really, really struggling with. And once I got through those 11, I remember it was about 11 days sober because it was the second weekend sober when I really was like, wow, I feel amazing, but it took to get that point. And from there, it was just like, oh my God, I never want to do those 11 days ever again in my life. Right. And then that was just like the momentum to keep me moving forward to get to where I am today.
Wow, that's incredible. And it's so interesting. I mean, you say it so casually about getting a job in Kuwait. I think for most people that even just like that initial transition, as I'm thinking of your story, because I wonder, when at the beginning of your story, when you talked about like what you were kind of encountering and the frustration about not drinking, like, did you know at that point that, or not being able to drink, did you know at that point that it was something you were maybe questioning within yourself, or were you more like frustrated with Kuwait and it's like, how could they have these rules? Like, at what point did you start to know it was becoming problematic for you?
It's a really good question. So there are moments that I remember from the past that I look back on that seem like red flags in hindsight. And I'm not sure if I realized that they were red flags as they were occurring. So like, for example, oh, something just popped up. Sorry. So for example, when I was right before I moved to Kuwait, I moved into my friend's little sister's house. I was just, subletting a room for a couple months for the summer before Kuwait. And I remember that because I had always chosen my roommates and I had always chosen people like me, people that like to party a lot. And so there was always partying happening at my house. Like I remember, my roommates from my undergrad might have people over till 4 a.m. Like I would get home from a yoga class and my other roommates, were all drinking on like a Monday night. So it was just normal to have partying around me. So my drinking didn't seem excessive. And then I moved in with this group of girls and they were athletes. So they were all runners. One of them played lacrosse. And for them, like watching Bachelor on a Monday night, they would not get drunk. And when they would say, let's go for a drink, like the one time we ever went out drinking and they said, let's go for a drink, we had a drink and then we came home. And I was like, wow, this is
a thing.
Yeah. And I remember there being very mindful about my consumption because I didn't want them to judge me. And I don't know if the penny dropped at that point in me of like, oh, I think this is an issue. But I then remember a couple years later, my partner at the time moved in with me. So he lived with me for a little bit. And I remember when he moved in, trying to hide how much I drank. And he also drank a lot too, but he was really interesting. I think he was one of those like intense moderators. He's very much like a math and science type of person. So he was the type of person, he literally had a Google Drive where he would track every drink he had. And we would get drunk together on the weekends, but then during the week he would not drink. And so I remember him moving in and me being very mindful about like, I can't drink too much around him. And then, that only lasted for so long. And then it hit a point where it just, I had every excuse for why I was, having a drink on a Wednesday.
Yeah. And did you find then or as you've gone through this journey with giving up alcohol, have those relationships, do you still maintain the relationships that you had with the friends that were, you were really drinking strongly with, or did you notice kind of a change? And because that's something that I feel comes up with a lot for people.
Yes.
When they think about, okay, if I give up alcohol, how is this going to impact the relationships in my life where alcohol is present or has been really present in the past?
Yeah. So, my friends, this was probably the hardest thing at the time was that, so because I had lived as an expat abroad, you end up in a new community and you form a new group of friends. And when I went to Abu Dhabi, my intention was to be getting blackout drunk, right? That's what I wanted to do when I moved there. And so when I got sober, which was maybe 2 years into it, I think it was maybe 2.5 or so years into it, my friends supported, like verbally supported, they weren't pressuring me to drink. They definitely made a lot of comments about, like, oh, just have one, how can you say you can quit forever? But they definitely were not pressuring me to drink per se. But it was like, as soon as I was sober around them, I was like, oh my God, this is not a room that I want to be in. It was like, once I realized like, I'm getting so drunk to just numb myself out to all this. Like, I don't want to sit through this conversation where we're gossiping about people we work with. I don't want to sit here calling names. I don't want to sit here talking about like my nails, my hair. Like, I just was like, whoa, I do not want to be in this room, basically. And they're great people, but I just was not, it was never the place for me to fit in. And so early sobriety was probably the loneliest time of my life because of this little group that I had created around me in Abu Dhabi, which was not for me. But in terms of like other people from my life, like my high school childhood friends, all of them are still in my life. All these people in Canada who we all used to party together, they're amazing. Like, I remember going home for the summer and 2 of my high school friends, because we used to always drink when we would watch The Bachelor. And I think it was usually me, bringing over all the alcohol, but 2 of my friends got alcohol-free champagne and made alcohol-free mimosas. It was like the sweetest thing and like most thoughtful thing. And like that means so much to me. Anytime someone from my drinking past goes out of their way to like make me feel comfortable around them. Another example is like my friend who I was staying with in Dubai, like he always has Heineken Zero in the fridge. And he was one of my big drinking friends from Kuwait. And it's like, I always just know he's going to have that in the house. And like, he doesn't drink it. Like it's usually like, he'll have some left over from the last time I was there, you know, but it's like any of those old friends that go out of their way to make it a comfortable place just means so much.
Oh, I
So
love that
yeah,
so much. You gave me the goosebumps when you were saying that, because I think there is so much fear wrapped up around losing friends. And the reality is,
yeah,
if you build friendships on getting blacked out, getting wasted, and they really don't have depth, then, the
yeah.
truth is they could fall away. But discovering those real friendships, isn't that one of the greatest gifts, is just like being able to discover the depth that you do have in some of those relationships?
Totally. Totally. And like I have so much gratitude for those people and I think they know it. Like I just really express like how much the people who made an effort mean to me because it's really beautiful when you kind of sort. I think I posted something on Instagram about it, that sobriety has this way of sorting your friends into two groups. And you just figure out like who lands where.
Oh, I love that. And so when you did decide that you were going to give up alcohol and get sober, were you able, because you're so, something that I really admire about you is you are so open with your story, and you're so willing to just share and tell people about like all of it, and really help people get sober too. Has it always been that way? Like were you right away being able to kind of announce to people that you're giving up drinking?
No, definitely not. So when I first was quitting, I actually joined this community online called 1 Year No Beer. I don't know if we talked about this before.
Yeah, we did touch on it.
Um, yeah. And so I was part of this Facebook group. And when I signed up for it, I was like so concerned about what other people thought about me. I was so concerned about them judging me. I actually remember I used to get targeted ads for 1 Year No Beer, and I would not even like the posts or the page. Like I would go look at it, but I would not even like it because I was afraid that other people would see that I had liked it and would judge me, which is so interesting because I actually encountered someone who came on one of my retreats told me the exact same thing about me. She said, I cannot follow your accounts because I don't want people to think that I have a problem. And I was like, wow, I had forgotten that I went through that. And I know it's like a very real part of it. And so I wouldn't like it. I didn't want to be in the group. I paid for it, but I was part of their like Slack account, which is like that other kind of social media communication app, because I just didn't want people to find me. And I ended up kind of caving. So I was on the Slack reading the posts and I was like, man, I really just need to get in this Facebook group. And so I finally got in it around day 7 or 8. And this was like the game changing moment for me. This is what I would do all day when I was in the morning, the evening, when I was craving drinking, when I was bored, I would go on this Facebook group and I would read other people's posts. And this was like life changing for me to hear other people's stories. And so I ended up, I think it was around day 14, I posted for the first time, started gaining a following, started getting a lot of interactions, started making friends. And then actually what prompted me to share my story was not even me. It was, they asked me to do a testimonial. They asked me that on day 60 and I sat on it for 30 days. Like I was like, I cannot impulsively make this decision because this is going to be out there forever. And so finally on day 90, I was like, okay, I'll do the testimonial. And then I thought, okay, I have to put this on my own page so that it becomes a story I'm telling as opposed to gossip that people are going to come across and then gossip about me behind my back. So I posted it on my own story or my own page, got so many beautiful comments, so many likes, so many messages from people I had known my whole life saying, hey, I'm on a sober journey, or hey, my parents on a sober journey, or someone I love, or whatever. And this was when I finally was like, wow, no one is talking about this. And everyone, like either you yourself are struggling or someone's struggling. Like it is a very common experience. And the problem is that we don't talk about it. And so that was kind of the turning point for me. And then I just started talking more and more. And in the beginning, it wasn't really part of my identity. Like it was just like, oh, I'm going for a run. Oh, I'm going for a bar. Oh, I'm 100 days sober. Here's my food. Like it was like just kind of like a little here and there. And then it slowly just became like my thing. And so yeah, I never would have thought that I would be doing this here today, right? Like 3 years later, telling my story on podcasts, and it's pretty amazing.
That's incredible. And it's so good to hear, because I think for a lot of people, it is those sort of like, you take those baby steps and then there's the reinforcement and also the reminder that, whoa, this has real value. Like people really need to hear this, because not everybody is part of communities where, be it a recovery room or an online Facebook group or whatever it is. For the most part, it is hard to hear these stories in everyday conversation because they're
Yeah,
hard to tell. So when
totally.
you started sharing, were you focusing on more on talking about the challenges, or do you like to share about, like, are you more for kind of encouraging people towards sobriety? Because I really love how you talk about being sober curious and sober curious yoga. I think it's extremely inclusive and inviting for people. So how do you go about navigating those conversations or sharing about your experience?
Yeah, I think in the early days it would mostly be it would be a mix of like I would share my successes. Sometimes I would share my triggers and my struggles, and a mix of like encouraging posts for other people. Sometimes I do like really silly, kind of funny TikToks. I think in the podcast sphere, that's when I get really deep into like the hard stuff, the hard stories, when I'm actually talking. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. I just kind of share whatever like authentically comes from my heart, I guess. So kind of a wide mix of things. And I think it's important that we do kind of share all the bits of it, like the hard stuff, the good stuff, the successes, the struggles, because that's what like the real sober journey is. It's like up and down, and um, it's not easy.
100%. And how does yoga fit into your recovery journey? Because I know that's a big part of what you share. So how has that
Yeah.
been part of your own experience, and then marrying these worlds of recovery and yoga?
Yeah. Well, yoga saved me way back in in like 2010, 2011. I was starting to experience mood disorder symptoms for the first time. And I was really, really struggling with getting this recognized and diagnosed. And yoga became my coping tool. And so yoga was my mental health tool I mean, it still is, but it was the primary tool for a long time until I got diagnosed and properly medicated. And I thought at the time, because no one was talking about mental health, I thought that I was like the only person in the world suffering, and I thought as a yoga teacher that I was like a fraud if I had these mental health issues, because I thought the yoga teachers just like came out of the womb and were there to like then impart their wisdom on being calm, right? Right? Like this is like this idea that we have. And it's kind of the way that I felt like the yoga world was presenting itself to its students. And I remember in 2017, I was going through a really like my darkest depressive episode. And a yoga teacher in Canada, a very famous yoga teacher, actually passed away. And he was suffering from the same mood disorder that I was. And this was like this huge pivotal moment for me, because I was like, wow, he is so famous and so knowledgeable and such an incredible teacher. And he's also been navigating and suffering with this illness. And he was like a mental health advocate. Like he was known to be an advocate for mental health. And then to not be able to feel like he could share with the world that this is what he was privately dealing with. And it was just like, wow. And it took me a long time to realize, wow, a lot of yoga teachers actually are struggling and are suffering, and they're learning these skills as coping tools to help themselves. And then they're so inspired by that they are helping others. And that's really what it is, right? So many people that share yoga are doing it because this is what saved them, right? And so they're trying to help others. And that was like this pivotal thing for me. And now it's become such a big element of what I do. So it's not just the yoga practice, but we do a lot of, someone described my community the other day as like a menu of self-help resources. And I love that, because it's like we do workshops, we do journaling, the other day we did vision boards. It's just like there's so many more elements to it than just the physical yoga practice. And for all the sober classes, we do sober check-ins at the start of the class. So we're given 15, 20 minutes to share how we're doing. And I also do that in my yoga teacher trainings. And this morning we did like a group practice where we just did a check-in before. And so it's all about like community and connection and empowerment. And it's a safe space to share your stories. And it's really what I wish I had, 10 years ago. And so it has played such a massive role, and it's basically how I support others. So yeah.
That's amazing. And it's amazing that's, that story that you shared. And also that to think that you came into this practice for your mental health. And then there's this fear of being perceived, being not enough as, to be like you spoke to a really important point about how yoga can be personified. I think sometimes online through too much visual depiction, or we get these ideas in our head of like striving for perfection. And I think that can really deprive people of some of the deeper aspects which are available, especially when you gravitate just towards the physical practice. So I'm curious, because that's amazing that, back then, before you even recognized the potential of yoga as a tool for mental health, you noticed that it was having, you were having direct experience with it. Did you have people or teachers or mentors kind of guiding you into the deeper philosophy, or was there a point where you started to take your practice off the mat and explore some of the deeper layers of the practice?
Yes. So it was kind of, some of the yoga philosophy was coming up in the yoga studio I worked for. I was there as a student for about a year, and then I started working for them. So I would clean the studio in exchange for free classes, which I always think, it always makes me laugh when I think about this, because I did not know how to use like any cleaning tools at all. And I think I just made the studio messier more than anything, but I loved it because I was part of a community and I felt like I played an important role, and I felt, it felt very purposeful. And I ended up working at the front desk. So I would run the front desk, which I loved. I was way better at that than cleaning the studio, because I loved meeting people, learning their names, finding out what classes they go to, chatting with them. And at some point, my boss recommended that I buy one of the books that we sold at the store, which I reference all the time. And I actually mentioned it on a podcast yesterday. And I was joking, saying like, I need to get kickbacks for this book, because I feel like I've sold hundreds of copies of it. But this book is called Meditations from the Mat by Rolf Gates. Do you know Rolf
Such
Gates?
a good one. And he is incredible. He works a lot with one of my teachers, Nikki Myers.
Yes.
So I'm very familiar with him, and he's a very special person.
He is. Oh my God. And so this book was on the shelf and I bought it. And this book, I have read it so many times. I have 3 copies of it. And I have memorized passages from it. And I actually met him on my 100 days sober, which was incredible. I went to his yoga teacher training with him at Kripalu Yoga Center in the States. It was incredible. But so I bought this book and I started reading it. And this was like the pivotal change for me. And there's actually this study that I reference in my yoga teacher trainings, that they took 2 groups suffering with mental health, and one group just practiced the asana, the poses of yoga, and then one group practiced the asana plus studying yoga philosophy, and the group that studied yoga philosophy actually had a greater improvement in their mental health, which is pretty amazing.
Wow.
Because I think we both know, like, studying the philosophy of it changes the way that you perceive the world around you. And so having this story, Meditations from the Mat, and what I love about it is that he makes it super relatable from his modern life. His stories are funny, and he is a person that's overcome so much adversity to get to where he is today. And so reading this book was like the turning point for me. And then I must have read it before my yoga teacher training. I went for my 200-hour in 2014. So I was really young. I think I was like 22. I just turned 22. I was like the youngest person on the training. And then that was like it was just so amazing to be immersed, for a month in all of it.
Oh, that's incredible. Yeah, I think because I know Rolf has been through recovery himself or is in recovery himself.
Yeah.
And it's so amazing. Like that would be something that, people who are looking for a yoga teacher, and you're such a good example of this
Yeah.
yourself, people who are not upholding this false image of perfection and that are
Yes.
really like embracing the
Yes.
realness. I feel like he does that so well. And,
Yeah.
I've heard him speak alongside Nikki, and they're both like, their realness is healing in itself.
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, that's
There's
incredible. So, oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say there's one story. It's not related to recovery, but this is like one of my favorite stories from the book is Rolf is teaching about the concept of asteya, which is non-stealing. And he is writing all these essays. And at the same time, he goes on a yoga retreat in Mexico or somewhere down south. And he borrows scissors from the venue to cut things off the wall. And then he thinks like, these are going to be useful. So I'll just tuck them into my suitcase and, use them the next time I'm here. And then he goes to check out, and the woman at the front desk tells him that scissors don't grow on trees down in Mexico, and that she needs them back. And I love this story because it's like, here he is. He's like one of the most famous teachers in the States, writing a book on yoga philosophy. And in the midst of writing it, stole something. And it's small and insignificant, right? Scissors, but it is like the perfect example of exactly what you just described, which is like the realness and the humbleness of like, I am not holier than thou. I'm human. I just made this mistake. And this yoga philosophy is here for me to reflect on my actions and then make right actions so that I feel good about myself. And I just love that, because you encounter so many yoga teachers who are like, I don't eat meat and that's my ahimsa. And why are you eating meat? And I just love that he's very, just like you described, authentic.
Yeah, definitely. And something that actually jumped out to me when you were speaking, and it seems like you already had that foundation at the time of, the yoga philosophy, is when you were saying, when you gave up alcohol, you started to really be aware of all of like the gossiping and the talking that was happening
Yeah.
at the table when you were in Abu Dhabi. Like, and some people, I think it's really important point. Like some people give up alcohol and it's like, okay, the alcohol is done. And it's like, there's a difference between giving up alcohol and really stepping into like a recovery journey and
Yeah.
embracing some of these deeper aspects. So do you think that just came natural because you had this foundation, like these seeds were planted in you already and you were
Yes.
already kind of learning about that? Or was that part of the recovery or the sobriety? I don't know if you refer to the program you were doing with 1 Year No Beer as recovery, but was that part of your initial sober journey?
I think it was I think I went through the ebbs and flows of yoga, philosophy being part of my life. Like I got really into it in 2014, and then I moved to Kuwait and then got submerged in like, the chaos of life there and the stress, and I lost it. And then I went healing again on my 300-hour, and then I went to Abu Dhabi and got into partying, and then I lost it. And I feel that sobriety was like, it's like the third time of coming home. And I feel that people go through this. Like I lead yoga teacher trainings and I mentor new yoga teachers. I witnessed similar types of things, like maybe not with the same substances or the exact same scenarios, but you get really into yoga and then life happens and you lose it. You're too busy with your job, or you have these excuses, and then maybe you're just teaching once a week, but you're not actually personally practicing. And then you come home to it again and you're like, oh yes, this is why I do this. And then life happens again, you lose it. And I feel like I was going through that a lot. And then I think it was probably one of the reasons I got more and more into drinking was because I could not handle this world that I was surrounded with. And it's not to say, again, with the whole thing about gossiping, it's not that I don't gossip because I'm like better than anyone. It really makes me feel horrible about myself when I'm talking about other people behind their back. I feel horrible. And I don't feel good when I'm sitting around listening to it either, And so it's like, how do I make myself feel good? It feels good to feel good. I'm just going to step out of this situation. And I think it took me almost a decade. And now I feel that I'm finally in this beautiful little bubble of like sober yoga people I've built around me, where it's just like joy and peace and kind words. And like, of course we talk about the traumas and the stuff we're going through, but it's not in a gossipy way. It's in like a processing way. And that's like, it's a beautiful place to be. It's like coming home.
Oh, I love that so much. And you say like you really don't like gossiping. I don't think anybody likes gossiping deep down. It's that you're aware. Like I think sometimes it just becomes so normalized in the same way that drinking has become so normalized,
Yeah.
blacking out has become so normalized. Do we really necessarily like the way that it makes our bodies feel, or do we like the way that we feel when we walk away from a conversation after gossiping and talking really badly about people? Like, I don't think anybody likes that.
No.
Are these things that you incorporate now when you're guiding people through? Well, first, why don't you talk a bit about what you offer now and how you serve the sober community, because you're doing so many amazing things.
Yeah. So the biggest thing, or the entry point for a lot of people into my community, is a Sober Curious Yoga 30-day challenge. So that's the starting point. We have an amazing community of yoga teachers. So my vision and my dream is to be basically having 24/7 yoga and sobriety meetings based on all the different time zones and all the people around the world. And we're definitely getting there. I think we're up to like 50 classes on the schedule a week, which is incredible.
Wow, that's
Yeah.
amazing.
And so we have a lot of yoga teachers teaching for my community, and many of them started out in the same place, which is joining one of these 30-day sober challenges. And of course, we have people as well in the community that are not necessarily in the sober part of it. So it's kind of a community open to everyone with yoga for everyone. But I would say our core offering is that 30-day sober yoga challenge. And so as part of that, you get an open pass to join any of the live Zoom classes. And as well, you get access to all of our on-demand content. I think we have like 3,000 recorded yoga classes now, which is amazing. And then I do group coaching with the 30-day challengers once a week. So they get to meet in a small group with me, and it's usually 10 people. And within our schedule, we have regular yoga classes where you just jump on, you say hi, you practice yoga. And then we also have sober yoga classes, and those have a meeting at the start. So a 15-minute meeting where people share what they're processing, what they're dealing with. And then we go into the practice, and those are only for people on a sober journey. And so this is kind of like the core thing we offer. And then I also have some bigger programs for yoga teacher trainings. So I have a 200-hour foundations yoga teacher training, which is the entry point that anyone who wants to teach yoga would take. And then I do a 30-hour additional certification program, which is a Sober Curious Yoga teacher training course. So that would certify you to facilitate the Sober Curious yoga classes that we offer. And then the third thing I offer is a 300-hour advanced teacher training for yoga and mental health. And so these are kind of the core things that I'm offering at this point. And like, I absolutely love it. Like I was saying to you earlier, when you asked how was quarantine, I was like, well, it's amazing because I actually get to do all of these programs that I don't regularly get to participate in because we have classes happening all the time. And so I've been doing a lot of yoga, and just seeing the way my teachers are keeping this community spirit alive in their classes. It's just like, it's beautiful. And you jump on a class and I don't even recognize some people in it. I'm like, wow, like you're part of my community and I don't know you. And it's just like, it's amazing. So yeah.
Oh, that's so great. I mean, what better timing too than the pandemic, when not only are so many people feeling the intense pressure and maybe struggling with alcohol for the first time, but also that you have this online and people can access it from
Yeah.
anywhere. So, and it's a really good thing just for anyone listening to make note that because it's really easy to feel like you're isolated
Yes.
when you stop drinking, because probably, a lot of us, when we're active in drinking, we build our immediate community around people who like to do the things we like to do, which is drinking.
Right.
So just to know that you've got this big, like really vibrant and fun community that's meeting at all hours of the day is just a really good thing for people to make mental note of.
Yeah.
I also wanted to know, like, do people sometimes they've never really considered sobriety, but they just like, is this the entry point to a lot of people just coming in with these sort of like different options to explore?
So there are also a lot of people. So the mindful life practice itself is open for everyone. So it's not entirely a sober community. And there are a lot of people who literally just came to my yoga class in Abu Dhabi. And all of a sudden they're like on a sober curious journey doing like 90 days sober. Or, like I have someone who joined who, I worked at summer camp. I was her daughter's camp counselor, like 15 years ago, and she started doing the yoga classes, and then every year she does our dry January program with us. And so it's really amazing because it exposes people to this idea of sobriety who might have never thought of it before. And so yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah, too. I think because you discovered, you had yoga as a resource for mental health early on, it seems like. But I think sometimes people embrace things like yoga for mental health, but don't actually consider how alcohol is
Yes.
influencing their mental health. So they might come for the yoga. I mean, do you
Yeah.
educate people, or what do you think is important for people to know who are struggling with their mental health about how alcohol might be playing a role in that? Because for some reason, nobody wants to talk about that. It's like all the other
Yeah.
things, but the alcohol seems to be like the elephant in the room a lot of times.
Oh my goodness. If I knew, like if I could go back and teach myself and my friends the facts about how alcohol induces anxiety, is a depressant. I just feel like there was so little. I mean, I don't think I had any education on like anything about my whole mind body system. Like, I didn't understand how anything was connected, what I ate, how I slept, if I drank water. Like, I feel like that's something that I'm still relearning over and over again throughout my life. But the alcohol thing, I just think that there was like no education on it. And so many, the second pandemic happening right now is a mental health pandemic, basically. Like, people all around the world are struggling so much. And at the same time, there's these ads on TV, like to the Tropicana have a moment ad where, moms are in the closet drinking mimosas at, 11 in the morning. And there's just this whole joke, this pandemic joke, that people are just getting drunk in the morning. And it's like, okay, what came first, the chicken or the egg? And I think that a lot with my mental health. It's like, yes, I had this genetic predisposition to have this mood disorder, but would it have gotten so bad if I had started drinking, or was it getting bad and that's why I started drinking? Like, I don't know. But the truth is, it's like, it's so interrelated, it's so intertwined, and there's just so little awareness.
Yeah, it's almost encouraging self-medication. I find
Mhm.
that really disturbing. I have been targeted with ads so many times in the last year, and I don't know if I've referenced this before. I don't know if the regulations would be different in the States, but I'm constantly getting ads for delivery alcohol to be dropped off that are clearly
So
exploiting
interesting.
mental health issues and to sell alcohol to people. And I really do think there is just like a lack of awareness.
And you know what? I find that so fascinating because I think we talked about this when we had lunch, and I'm still getting ads from the Middle East on my phone because I still have a Middle Eastern number, which I kind of like. I see the TikToks from the Middle East. But anyway, it's interesting that you mentioned that because I'm like, I never see any of that. But so in the Middle East, it is like strictly forbidden to advertise any alcohol. And even like, we had an alcohol shop in my building, and it was like, it didn't even have a sign. It was just black walls. And I love that because it's like, it doesn't mean that, there are probably people who live in the Middle East who do drink, like Muslim people probably still do it, but you come to it, you encounter it on your own, and it's not in your face. And there's none of those stupid like chalkboards with the like 1 tequila, 2 tequila, 3 tequila floor. Like there's no, like, even my content gets blocked and banned sometimes because people think I'm promoting alcohol, because I'm promoting
Wow.
like I would have these beautiful TikToks of me making mocktails or me saying, hey, buy this alcohol free stuff. And they would block it and say, this is a community violation. And I just love that, because that's when I really became aware of like, that region does it really well in that there's no ads. So if you drink, it's like, you're not being brainwashed by the ads. It's your choice to drink. And I definitely think that would be, it's like the way they did it with cigarettes, right? There's no cigarette ads now. There's a warning on cigarettes that says, they cause cancer. And I feel like the world needs to do that around alcohol, because when I was growing up, it was a very clear, don't smoke. Like it's an addictive drug. And I think that this is the approach we need to have towards alcohol.
Yeah, I completely agree. And you asked me a question. I remember if I thought that alcohol was going to have its cigarette moment.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think? I mean, do you think
Yes.
we're getting there, or that
Yes.
that's coming?
100%. And you know what? I thought when I first was getting sober, I gave it maybe 10, 15 years. Like I said, by the time I have children, I do not think that they're going to be growing up in the world that I was. I actually think it's happening quicker because of the pandemic, because of how many people are in mental health crisis, because of the prevalence of addiction. It's starting to become really fashionable to be sober. Like, look at how many sober celebrities there are. I feel like every day there's a new sober influencer, there's a new Quit Lit book. And I don't think it's just because I'm in the sober kind of echo chamber. Like, I really think it's touching. I think it's starting to touch everyday life. I feel like for a long time, one celebrity said this, I can't remember who it is, but they said recently, if the person who founded Alcoholics Anonymous saw how prevalent addiction was today, they wouldn't say that you would have to be anonymous. And I loved that, because I was like, that's so true. And the louder our voices get, and every person who adds to the story, telling their story, coming on podcasts, writing posts, I think we're going to have this moment. I hope by the time I have children, we're going to be able to say like, yeah, we were part of the pioneers that started the cigarette moment for alcohol.
Oh, I love that so much. I get the goosebumps when you talk, because there's like so much passion. I really feel it too. I mean, I had to ask myself the same question about the echo chamber. It's funny because on social
Yeah.
media, I have a separate page that's specifically on sobriety, and all of a sudden I'm like, oh my God, I'm in this space where all anyone is talking about. And then I have to remind myself, I'll be like, oh, no, I've like crafted this fear. But so I had to check in with myself, and I'd be like, am I just like convincing myself that this is a bigger thing than it is? But then you see on like the Sex and the City reunion, they're
Yes.
talking about
Mhm.
Miranda. My younger
It's
brother had
amazing.
written a paper about that Tropicana thing. And I was the story
Yeah.
about Tropicana. And he asked me if I heard about it. And I was so happy to hear that, because to be honest, not everyone saw the issues with that. I realized when I shared about it. Like
Yeah.
I did encounter people who thought that I had a personal bias because,
Yes. Me too.
and so I thought, okay, like, it's good to hear that perspective, and it's good to know that people think that way. But I actually feel like the more that I see these stories popping up, like, and big magazines promoting these alcohol-free companies. And I was just in an alcohol-free bar in Denver, which was so cool. And they're
Yeah.
doing like dating events and live music. And I totally agree. I think the fact that we could look back and be like,
Yeah.
like we're able to kind of have an awareness of this then, and relive the change happening, because I really do believe it's happening right now too.
Yeah. You know what? That Sex and the City example is a fantastic one, because I feel, well, first of all, I'm obsessed with that show. I think they've done such a good job of like positioning older women as like beautiful, fashionable main characters. And I just feel like that generation has never had like a feature show like this before. So I just love it. I'm probably going to rewatch it. But the whole Miranda story is amazing because previously we would see either you are, so severely struggling with a drinking problem that you're like homeless, or you're just an everyday drinker. And this was like our two depictions that we had on TV, and they never showed the casual buildup the way that they depicted it so well with Miranda, of like just having another one before this event. And then I just love how she's had like a modern sober story that so many people can relate to, of like, I've just gone cold turkey, like it's just it's just beautiful. And so that's a perfect example of like, we're seeing that storyline, and there's probably so many people around the world that are relating and seeing themselves in it. And I think it's only the beginning.
Yeah. And you probably hear the most incredible transformation stories in our, all the time in your community. How does that feel, being able to know that your willingness to be so brave with your story and to share what you've learned is like, how does that feel, seeing the change in other people?
It's amazing. Sometimes I'm not even aware of the reach that I have. Yesterday, I was invited to be a guest speaker at a sober community in, it was a Canadian sober community, and there was someone there who said she's listened to all my episodes more than once. And I was like, wow, like that is just incredible. And sometimes you think you're just speaking out to like no one, and it's really beautiful. Sometimes people are not even they're gonna be like me, right? I never liked, I never followed, I never engaged, but I was listening, and I was taking in these stories from other people until they one day sunk, and I was brave enough to make a change. Right. And so I think there's a lot of people out there who, even if you feel like you're having no impact, like maybe you don't even have a lot of followers on your sober account or whatever, even just by even telling your story on a normal account, even if you don't have a sober account. So anyone who's listening, like the more that we share and the more willing we are to be vulnerable, the more we can make an impact.
Oh, I love that. I completely agree. And I know we're coming up on our time here, but I would love for you to share, what if for somebody who is sober curious or maybe new on their sober journey, what would be like the things that have been really your like non-negotiables, or those things that you look to that were like made the biggest impact on you and have really supported you in staying sober?
I would say finding your community. And what I want to express to people is that there's so many communities out there. And I feel when I first joined, I thought it was like One Year No Beer or Alcoholics Anonymous. Like I feel very fortunate that the targeted ads reached me to One Year No Beer, because I would never even know it existed had I not gotten these targeted ads. Right. And so I think we get super closed-minded, and we don't think there's options, and AA would never have been the right fit for me based on everything I knew about it. And when I heard about, like, once I was a few months into it, I think it was it was The Unexpected Joys of Being Sober. I found out about this book and I read it and got to a page in the book where she listed like all these sober groups, all these sober communities, all these Instagrams, all these podcasts. And I remember just being like, what? Like, what?
Why didn't I see that?
Yeah. And now that I'm in it, I'm so aware, like there's this Naked Mind. There is the Tempest Sobriety School. There is One Year No Beer. There's AA. There's, My Sober Curious Yoga. There are so many groups out there, like the Retired Party Girl. Like, I feel like I could probably list like 20 or 30 of them. And I just think there's so many, and you're going to find ones that maybe are not exactly the right fit for you, but that doesn't mean that sobriety is not the right fit for you, right? It's just finding that exact mixture and that combination and those people, and they are there. So like, I joined a community recently that ended up not being for me because there were like 200 people on the Zoom call. And I was like, okay, this is not for me. And so I think that you just need to get courageous and dip your toes and explore, and see what's out there, because you will find the right fit.
Oh, I love that so much. Yeah, that's interesting. You bring up the, joining on a call with that many people, because I think there's
Mhm.
two different, sometimes people might, be worried that they are going to be seen and they want that anonymous factor. And
Yeah,
some people really, actually want to be able to engage and feel part of something. So that's just a really good reminder that everyone is unique in their recovery journey.
totally. It's so true. Yeah.
And so when you're not coaching people and getting sober and running this incredible online community in your trainings, what do you like to do for fun?
This is a really hard question to ask because I feel like my personal and my professional life is just one thing. Like I was saying the other day, like I don't even know why I have Canva accounts because it's like all one thing. Like it just feels like everything I do is so geared around my business. But I used to play guitar. And I used to be, when I first got sober, I would play guitar. I was part of a choir. I was really into cooking. And then I just got really, really hardcore into, I was working full time. I was building the business. I did not really have a moment for myself. And one of my intentions of, now I've stepped into this beautiful life where I'm running my business full time. I get to do all these amazing things. Now I'm coming to Bali. One of my intentions is just to be a bit more carefree and joyful and bring back some of these things in. So pick up a guitar, um, learn to cook again, hopefully just enjoy like the nature and the hiking that Bali has to offer.
I love that so much. And will you share with people where you're moving to and your setup so that, afterwards and when the world opens back up, people know where they can find you and come on retreat with you?
Yes. So I am going to be living in Ubud, and I'm going to be this spring, I'm going to be working for a retreat center called Bazandari. And Mary got to come and take a yoga class with me there, which is amazing. They have a beautiful shala in the jungle. And so I will be teaching classes for their community. And I've actually decided I was meant to be living there on the property, but I made a recent decision to get my own place
Oh, nice.
that's going to be outside of the retreat center. So I'm actually going to be able to have my own bathtub and cook my own food and have a pet there, which is great. So I'm going to be living in this beautiful villa and teaching yoga at Bazandari. And hopefully I will be running live yoga retreats, live yoga teacher trainings as soon as COVID ends and everything gets back to normal.
Oh my gosh, incredible. Well, that definitely gives everyone something to look forward to. And I'm going to be sure to link all of the details of your challenges and trainings and
Same.
all of that. But thank you so much, Alex. You're such an inspiring leader for the sober community and just for everyone, really.
Oh, thank you so much. I really enjoyed being on the show. Thank you for the invitation.
Of course, safe flight back to Bali, and I hope to see you in person soon.
We will, for sure.